I smashed that thing. Alright, now that I've got a couple fish on top water, I'm going to transition to those techniques that I really find are really reliable. I love top water bites, don't get me wrong, but I knew that I passed over a lot of fish that just weren't willing to come to the surface to take those lures. So I'm going to go over 3 techniques that I think work year-round. I can always turn to these 3 techniques and they always produce for me. The first that I'm going to do is a spinnerbait. There's a lot of different spinnerbaits out there on the market, and what's great about spinnerbaits is just the versatility of this lure. It does pretty well in weedy situations, especially like grass and reeds, because of the wire here that prevents it from snagging up on the hook. But the thing that's great about this lure is that it can be fished in a lot of different ways. You can fish it shallow, you can let it sink, you can slow roll it, so you can retrieve it at a slow speed, fast speed. You can bump it off logs, off reeds, and still pull fish out, and it catches fish. It works in cold water and I've used this on just icy days and still caught fish. So I can cast it up into these reeds with minimal worry about it snagging up on anything. It can bounce off the reeds. You can even stall it, let it just flutter, and those blades will flutter back and forth like crazy. And that can trigger a strike too. Like especially out here, I'm fishing right on the edge of these pencil reeds. It's 16 feet deep. I might let that thing sink for a good 4 or 5 seconds before I start retrieving it, so that I'm getting a depth of 5 or 6 feet on the retrieve. Nice. There we go. Nice little bass on a spinnerbait. Come on. There you go. The bass in here aren't very big because this lake was recently rehabbed. So a big bass in here is going to be 17, 18 inches. So it's got your average size. Get this out of this timber. Pretty decent, very fat and healthy. There you go, inhaled that thing. Alright. Got the mama coot over here on her nest. I think she's got babies underneath there. You got babies underneath you there, mama? The coots really like this flooded timber for nesting. Oop. Yep, I see a little baby's head just popped out. Aw, that's cute. Alright, we'll leave mama be. Alright, now that I got a few fish on spinnerbait, I'm going to switch up and show you another technique, and I think this might be my favorite technique for catching largemouth bass. And this technique is called, this lure is called a Senko, or stick bait. It was first developed by Yamamoto, Gary Yamamoto. It's really probably the most boring looking lure in the world, but it really catches fish. And I'm extremely confident when fishing this lure. It's really nothing more than a simple stick bait. It's heavily salted, so there's a lot of weight in this plastic, so you don't need to weight it, especially if you're fishing largemouth and under 10-15 feet of water. As this thing falls, it'll shimmy. There's a couple different ways to rig it, but even with a free tail, the tail will shimmy. Or you can rig it in the middle with a hook called wacky rigging, which I'll show you. But because I'm fishing around weedy structure and woody structure, I'm going to rig this Texas style without weight on a 3/0 wide gap hook. A lot of people see these hooks and they wonder what they're for, and I want to show you how to rig them. It's for rigging weedless plastics, not just Senkos, but a lot of different styles. Several companies manufacture these hooks. I like Owner, Gamakatsu, and Trapper. Basically what you do is you'll run, there's two ends to a Senko. There's like a smooth area in the middle, and there's a short ribbed area and a long ribbed area. The long ribbed area is the tail. So take the short rib and push it up through that first point, and then move the worm all the way down. And then I actually push this up and over that knot and end there. And then what you want to do is you're going to push the worm back and pull that point through. Now you see the point sticking out here? What I do is I'm going to tuck that into that plastic right there. So now this is weedless. Bass comes and pushes down, exposes the barb, I can set the hook. But I can pull this through wood and vegetation and not get snagged up. This is my favorite color, and I am a big fan of Yamamoto custom baits. They're Yamasenkos. I think that they're the best on the market. I've played around with a bunch of other companies. There are a lot of other companies producing these stick baits, including Berkley. They have they're called the General, which is their stick bait, which did pretty well in Florida for a friend of mine. There's the Gambler, Fat Ace. There's Biospawn, makes their own stick bait. Yum has their Dingers, which is their stick bait, and I'll show you some of those. They all can be fished in a similar way. I just like the Yamamoto custom baits because they're the saltiest, which gives it weight. It makes the fish hold on, and makes it really easy to increase your landing ratio. So fishing these is really different than that spinnerbait. That spinnerbait is really a form of power fishing. With these, you just cast them out, you let them sink all the way down to the bottom, and you're watching your line, and you're looking for any kind of movement on your line. Or so a lot of times you'll see the line pop when a fish picks it up and starts to swim with it, or the line will just start swimming sideways, and you have time to reel down on them and give a really solid hook set. So as I was saying before, sometimes the Senko, just a matter of moving your cast 1 foot or 2 foot one direction, make a pretty big difference. There's a little fish just grabbed hold of the tail. Not bad enough. Chunky. Little chunker. He didn't set the hook on that, he set the hook on himself. Alright. There's fish. Yeah, a little guy. Here we go. Got him. Yeah. Not a bad fish. That. There we go. Take that. Man, they are chunkers. For sure. That fatty. Inhaled that. Alright. I switched up there to a watermelon color. Senko. Not a bad fish. And one of the problems is these Senkos tear out pretty easy because all that salt makes them soft. But don't throw these away, and I'm going to show you why. Especially with these Texas rigged ones, when you tear open the ends and you can't get the hook to hold in there anymore, these can still be wacky rigged or used in an alternative method, which I'm going to show you later today. Alright, so I'm going to rig another one on. There we go. There we go. Another bass on the Senko. Little guy. I think they're out here a little deeper. More in the 8 to 10 foot range rather than up shallow. Largemouth bass, they don't tend to migrate big distances within the lake, but they tend to move locally from shallow to deep in the spring. So in the spring they're going to move up shallow to spawn, and then as the summer progresses they'll move out deeper. That may mean little guy. That may mean going as deep as 20 feet or more, but it seems like a lot of these smaller fish will stay up in that 10 to 15 feet range, while the bigger females might go out even deeper than that. Come on. There you go. Okay. Alright, I'm going to cast out kind of towards those pencil reeds, and I'm going to watch my line. Oop, there's a jump. Fish. There. So anytime you cast out, you want to keep an eye on that line. If it jumps or moves forward, you know you got a fish. You don't really feel the bite. Just a little guy. Take it. So the Senko bite is all about watching your line. And that's why I like the braided line that floats on the top. Lets you see that bite a little bit better. There you go. So now I've traded out my wide gap hook for a different style hook. This is a 1/0 wacky rig hook. It's actually got some little monofilament weed guards there. Wacky rigging Senkos is extremely deadly. It's not as weedless as the technique I was using earlier using the wide gap hook, but I want to show you how to do this just because it is so effective. I really like this when I'm working the edges of weed lines early spring when there's not a lot of weeds, or if I'm working rocky areas where I know bass are holding and feeding on crayfish. So one of the things you should pick up is a little wacky rig tool. It's a little tube that comes with some rubber rings, O-rings on it. You want to grab one of those O-rings and slide it down the tube, but not all the way off. So just push it down towards the end of this tube. Then you're going to take whatever stick bait you're using, whether it's a Senko or another competing brand. You want to slide that on there to about halfway what's inside the tube. And you want to push the ring out over that worm. Now you take your hook and you put that underneath that ring. You don't go through the worm, you just go underneath the ring. And let me get you a closer look at that. I'll tangled up here. So there you go, you can see that ring, and it makes a nice wiggling action when it's falling. And so the bass will come up, they grab that, and you can set the hook. That's called wacky rigging. There we go. Not a bad fish. There you go. A lot of times that wacky rig will just slide up. You go through way less worms too with the wacky rig. Oh, you actually pulled that through the worm. It just slides up, and then you can just slide it back down and push the hook back underneath that ring. And you're back in business. Okay, another one of my favorite techniques, especially in these rocky areas, is what's called a Ned rig. A Ned rig is really a finesse jig in my mind. They have a unique shape. They tend to have a flattened rear on the head of the jig head, and they have a little, either some kind of a hook or something to grab a hold of your plastic so you don't lose the jig off of there. And you remember those Senkos I told you that would get torn up earlier in the day when I was fishing Texas rig? This is where they're going to come in handy, because I'm actually going to recycle this Senko and fish it on this Ned rig. So I'm going to cut about that much off. So I'm going to cut just about a little less than half of that Senko away, and I'm going to rig it up onto this Ned rig. And that's it. It's a very simple technique. It works really well in these rocky areas where there's crayfish and the fish are already down looking in the rocks. You're gonna let this jig fall to the bottom, and you can rock it back and forth in those rocky areas like that. They also make a weedless variety too. Lifted Jigs makes one, and I know Z-Man's coming out with a finesse bullet jig head that's also can be rigged weedless, so it's like that wide gap hook. I just recycle my Senkos, but you can also buy a product from Z-Man. They have their TRDs, the finesse, They make theirs out of Elastec. It's a very strong plastic. It can't be torn. It's not like a Senko. A Senko, if I did that to that, would be already in pieces. But these also work really well on these rigs as well. So let's give it a shot here and see if we can get into some baths before the jet ski crowd gets out and puts a damper on the fishing. So what I'm going to do is just go along this rock wall that's over here behind me, and I'm going to try and work out in 10 or 15 foot of water. Just let this slowly fall and see if we can get into some fish here. There we go, fish on, first cast. Doesn't take long. This technique is so deadly and yet so simple. It's a really good way to keep or catch keeper fish on lakes like this too. Because you'll pick up some of the smaller fish that are below the slot. There you go. Got it right there. I think this would be a really fun technique if you had an ultralight setup. Came out here, keep you busy most of the day. Alright, let's see if we can get another one. And that's why I save those Senko tails, because you can recycle them and you'll get a couple fish out of them each time using this Ned rig. So when I get down the bottom there, I just rock it. Those fish are already down there looking around in the crevices for crawfish. And a lot of times you'll just feel a really light tap. Little guy there. Beast. There we go. Fish. Yeah. A little more respectable. Pretty fish. Alright. That was on Ned rig. Beautiful. Well, it's starting to heat up and get a little toasty, and the bite's starting to slow down, so I'm probably going to wrap up here soon. But I hope that these 3 techniques help get you on some fish, especially if you're just getting started in bass fishing or you've been struggling to find bass. Just start really basic spinner baits, a couple spinner baits, a couple bags of Senkos, and some wide gap hooks or wacky hooks, and then just get some jig heads. They don't even have to be these specialized Ned rig jig heads. You can just use normal round ball jig heads, 1/4 ounce to 1/8 ounce, and put half of Senko on there. And that'll give you a lot of ways to target fish. I wouldn't obsess too much over the color of your plastics on the worms, on the Senkos. Just purples, anything green pumpkin, watermelon, red flake, all those sort of classic colors will all work for you on most lakes. In general, I really like darker colors in dirtier water, and in ultra clear water, and sort of that water that's kind of in between in terms of visibility. I like the pumpkin colors, the green pumpkin or watermelon with red flake or purple flake. You don't need to get 3 or 4 different rods. The spinnerbait, the Ned rig, and the Senko can all be fished on a 6.5 foot or 7 foot medium weight spinning rod, or you can do a medium bait caster and do just fine. Little guy. You don't have to spend a ton of money on it. This is just a basic Quantum QX36, it's like a $25 rod. It's not really super spendy, 2-piece. I got a Daiwa RG-AB series reel here. This is the 2000. It costs about 50 bucks. It's a really good reel for that price point. And then I just spooled up with 30-pound Power Pro, and then run a either 10 or 12-pound leader of fluorocarbon or monofilament. He freaking hailed that thing. Alright, well, till next time, guys, have a good time out on the water, be safe, and if you have any questions, feel free to comment below, and please subscribe. See ya!